So here's how I sort of renamed this talk a little bit, moving from reactive to proactive. And I think it really fits with the theme as how to bring quality closer to business and support the business. So I'm going to do 4 things today. I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges. That's going to be a little bit of a review for all of you, okay? But I think there's some important points to use to justify to business why you might need resources, why you need to do what you need to do. Because some of your business leaders might not understand how the environment in food safety and quality has changed. And then we gotta get in a topic that's where I started, validation and verification, okay? Because that's extremely important, and I hope I'm gonna give you some insights, and then we're gonna move on from there. If anyone wants my slides afterwards, let me know. You can use them, you can change them, whatever you want to. So you can take pictures if you want to, but you can have the original slides. All right, so where are we? So pathogens, different world, right? We have better surveillance, we have whole genome sequencing. Figure out where the pointer is here. And this is just an example, okay? It's a Listeria example, but the same thing is happening everywhere else. Before 97, when some of your plants were already plants, we would detect a Listeria outbreak every 3 years, and the average Listeria outbreak was 70 people. Enter molecular biology, enter whole genome sequencing. Now in the US, we detect about 6 to 10 outbreaks a year. That's one part. So outbreaks are much more likely to be detected. The other, maybe even more important thing is the average outbreak is now at 4 to 5 cases. Yes, this is US data, but the same trend's happening everywhere else in the world. What does that mean for the dairy industry? Companies, commodities like Listeria, pathogens, not a problem for us. We never had an outbreak. Now they have outbreaks. Why? Well, because they make one person sick every 2 years. And before, no one could figure that out. Now we have Listeria with the same fingerprint, 1 in 2000, 1 in 2005, 1 in 2010. Someone's like, huh, these 3 people all infected with the same Listeria fingerprint. When we interviewed them, they all said they ate ice cream. Everyone thought ice cream was relatively safe. And it's the brand is Bluebell, and Bluebell, needs $300 million to fix their problem, okay? And so that's something you need to convey to your businesses. The world has changed. The risks due to food safety are substantially higher. One simple math would say, well, chance of an outbreak every 3 years to 8 to 10 outbreaks a year, that's a 30 times higher risk to be identified as the source of an outbreak. Anyone in your company is confident that your food safety systems are 20 times better now than they were 20 years? Yeah, I don't think so, okay? So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is social media. Okay, and that's where spoilage arrives. Still my all-time favorite slides, there are other examples. So this is not a dairy product, it's Capri Sun, which is essentially sugar and color in a bag, right? When it gets contaminated with yeast, it becomes alcohol. Little kids drink it and they get drunk. No one wants a little toddler to come back drunk from daycare, but it happened, okay? Before social media, it didn't matter. Now with social media, people post things like this. My friend gave a kid Capri Sun. Kid said it tasted funny. Mommy drinks it. It tastes like alcohol. They put it on Facebook. No one uses Facebook anymore, I know that. But they put it on something else. 500,000 shares, number of likes, huge recall. There was like 3 months where there was no Capri Sun in the US, okay? One case, social media. Blue mozzarella cheese, colored cheese, also very friendly for internet, right? Spoilage comes in 2 categories. The one that's good on social media, that's color, texture change, short videos, that really gets people on social media. That really is gonna damage your brand. The one that's not so good on social media, like bad smell, still bad for your brand, but not as bad, okay? Social media, huge game changer with regard to business impact of spoilage. Now, with these same tools, we figured out, and we already talked about it a little bit, persistence. Most of our food safety and food quality issues aren't because a Salmonella, a Pseudomonas, a Listeria gets into our plant and lives there for a day. That's not going to destroy your business. The problem is if it comes in and lives there for weeks, months, or years, okay? Molecular biology tools told us very clearly that that happens. This is a plant we worked with, columns or months. We worked with them for 24 months. When we found Listeria, we fingerprinted, we color-coded it for you, What do you see here when you look at the color codes? What was that?
One resident.
Only one red, but you see a resident, right? What's the color of the resident Listeria? Green. That green Listeria is living there for 2 years, okay? That becomes a business risk, a substantial business risk. Yeah, at least is right. So where did that one live? Well, that lived in the floor mats, okay? We actually, with these tools, figured out it lived in the floor mats. How do you clean and sanitize floor mats? Anyone? Don't use floor mats, that's the right answer. The way people, when they have them sanitized, they put some foam on it. The foam doesn't penetrate into it. They submerge it in sanitizer. The sanitizer doesn't get to the middle. You put a person back on it, it comes back out. We had them throw out all their floor mats, not there anymore, okay? Molecular biology gives you the tools to find that, but sometimes you don't need molecular biology. We already talked about, had some great pictures about hollow rollers. Another issue, another textbook example of persistence. So the important thing to know is Listeria, spoilage organisms can persist. There are going to be a lot of different types of niches, but identifying those niches, managing them, preventing them is key for both spoilage and food safety. How bad does it get? This was a Listeria outbreak we were involved. One case in '88, 29 in 2000. That Listeria lived in that plant for 12 years. Another one, Salmonella agona, cereal. The US Centers for Disease Control has my favorite newspaper. It's called Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Reports. Essentially, Death and Disease Weekly, right? You don't want to have your brand name in that publication. This company did. 1998. Oops, something is not working. 1998, agona. 12 years later, agona again. And it mentions maltomil on the bottom here. That's the name of the company. Of course, that company doesn't exist anymore, right? 12 years of Salmonella surviving in that facility. We obviously know that doesn't just happen in the US, it's happening in Europe, it's happening all over the world. Major, major business risk. People need to know that your CEO, your CFO, the people that control your plant and your company need to know the risk. And they need to know the risks are different than they were 10, 20 years ago because of whole genome sequencing, social media, okay? Spoilage organisms, persistence is the same issue. This is an example we found. This actually is part of a filler unit. So you have a filler. The milk bottle comes here. Okay, that milk, that was fresh milk or HTST milk, whatever you want to call it, spoiled after 7 days. It should have kept 21 days. If you're Pseudomonas, where would you want to live here? Anyone? What's a good hiding spot for Pseudomonas in there? In the what? In the crevices, yeah, you got a metal ring here, and then you got metal rubber interfaces. Whenever, if you remember one thing, whenever metal and rubber or metal and plastic come together, perfect hiding spots, right? They're relatively tight. Your bacteria can be in there. Your sanitizer often has a hard time to reach it, particularly since this thing is compressed about 10,000 times a day, okay? So you need to sort of start to understand your hiding spots, and that gets back to validation and verification, okay? And this what you see is, this is compressed. The Salmonella was essentially hiding here. We got Salmonella from there. We fingerprinted it. It was the same as in the milk. What program failed here? Hygienic design, yeah. Part of it? Validation of what? Preventive maintenance. Okay, these things need to be replaced regularly. The rubber wears out, it gets cracks, etc. It's a design issue too, but we fixed it by preventive maintenance. They were like, oh, we fix it whenever it starts to look really cracked. Bad idea. You fix it every 3 months is exchanged, whether it's needed or not. You do monitoring to assure that your quality is there. Okay, if your numbers go up, then your preventive maintenance interval is too long. You might have to do it every month. Okay, environmental monitoring drives preventive maintenance scheduling. If you don't do it right, you're going to have problems. You're going to have big spoilage problems. So the world's oldest HACCP pyramid, right? Everyone's seen some version of that. Maybe many of you probably not, because it's really old. Key take-home message. Most food safety issues in the US, most food safety issues I've seen anywhere in the world, 99% are not a failure of the CCP. Okay, same thing with spoilage. Almost all food safety issues are failures of what? Prerequisite programs, right? The prerequisite programs are a problem. They fail us regularly, and that's when the big business impact comes, okay? Why is it? CCPs are validated and verified, right? Does any requirement say you need to validate and verify PRPs? No. It's my short answer. Francois will correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in the US, absolutely no, you don't need to validate and verify PRPs. You just do whatever you think is right. And it's not working, right? It's absolutely not working. That's what's causing us a lot of problems, and that's probably why you came with the question about validation of cleaning and sanitation, because that's what comes to mind first. It's the first and foremost prerequisite program. So that's what we need to do in order to change. We need to validate and verify some of these prerequisite programs. So how does that work? Let's first just level set, make sure we're on the same page. I always tell my students, words that start with the same letter, that end with the same letters, and have about the same length, people get confused, okay? They use them interchangeably, they think they mean the same thing. Validation and verification mean very different things. Of course, everyone in this room knows that, but if you go to your suppliers, some of them might be confused about validation and verification, okay? That's at least been my experience. So, validation, simply described as, are you doing the right thing? We translate that food safety as, are my practices effective at controlling the hazard of concern, okay? Verification is to make sure those practices are consistently implemented every day. Now, the dairy industry obviously knows that because we have pasteurization, which is, in my mind, or any heat treatment, the poster child for validation and verification, right? We know what heat treatment we need to effectively control the pathogens of concern, and then we measure flow rate, we know the length of our holding tube, we have continuous temperature monitoring, and we can prove to anyone that every drop of milk that comes out of our plant in any of our cartons hit that target for time temperature. It is the poster child for validation and verification, right? But how do we apply this beyond pasteurization? So, traditionally, just repeating what I said, validation and verification are therefore critical control points, but if you move to prerequisite programs, it is the Wild West. Okay. Different people do different things. You ask 10 people, how do I validate cleaning and sanitation? You get 10 different answers. And I'm going to give you an 11th different answer today. So, what programs need validation and verification, in my mind? And you have to prioritize them. You're not going to leave this conference, go home and say, all right, we're going to validate and verify all these programs. It's not going to work. You're going to have to pick the high-risk ones. Someone talked about a risk assessment. You need to figure out what are our hazards, which ones are controlled through the PRPs, where's our biggest risk, and that's where we're going to start tomorrow with validation and verification. In my mind, cleaning and sanitation are on the list, right? Related to that, sanitation master schedule. Now, I don't know whether it's the same terminology that's used in Europe. In the US, what we mean with this is cleaning and sanitation. It doesn't happen after every shift, but it's the stuff that happens regularly. Every 3 months, I'm going to clean and sanitize my air unit. Every 6 months, I'm going to do this. Every 12 months, I'm going to do that, okay? The frequency of master sanitation schedule, making sure everything I need on the master sanitation schedule is on it, is excessively important. Think what everyone always forgets is stuff up here on the ceiling. Any rails? Anyone has ever seen rails in a plant where you move heavy equipment, stuff like that? How often is that stuff cleaned and sanitized? Is that on your master sanitation schedule? Are you sure it's cleaned and sanitized often enough? Sometimes it goes over a food contact surface. Can tell you, blue cheese, blue mozzarella cheese, that was up there. We found it in the overhead railing. No one ever cleaned and sanitized that thing. Pseudomonas happily lived there. It was able to form blue collar. Every now and then tripped down. Your mozzarella had blue collar after, a week, 2 weeks. Not good, right? So make sure everything is on your master sanitation schedule. Preventive maintenance, gave you that example. Run times. Let's talk about run times. That's where quality meets business, right? In my experience, one of the #1 fighting points between operations and quality. Operations wants to run longer and do less sanitation. Food safety wants them to run shorter and spend more time on sanitation. And we argue. Let's stop arguing. Let's use science, okay? Let's validate our run times. Simple example, how do you do that? All right, my plant is running 12-hour shifts and then they sanitize. I'm gonna collect samples, product, environmental samples, you pick it, every 2 hours and do EB testing, total bacterial counts. And those numbers should be stable. If after 8 hours they're going up, well, I don't have my environment under control after 8 hours, okay? Okay, operation wants to go to 18 hours, to 24 hours. Great. Let's do a test run and do monitoring every 2 hours. Okay, numbers going up after 14 hours, you're not doing 24 hours, okay? Because you're losing control after 14 hours. You're gonna give us the resources to do a root cause analysis, fix the problem. Maybe our equipment isn't designed to run that long. Maybe we don't clean and sanitize deep enough. Once we fix that, and if we can prove that we can keep our environment under control for 24 hours, you get your 24-hour run times. That's how business works with quality. But we gotta give them something. We say, hey, sure you can run longer, but we need to have the data, we need to have validation and verification of run times. Huge opportunity, very few people do that. Supplier food safety programs, another thing that I would want to see validated and verified, okay? It's a long, separate discussion. I'm not going to go into that, but we can discuss that offline, or maybe someone has a question about that. All right, so the question was, how do you validate? I'm going to give you a very operational example, how we validate when we work with companies, and how companies we work with validate. So, situation is the following. You have a piece of equipment, a filler, a dryer, a slicer, whatever it is. You should have an SSOP, Sanitation Standard Operating Procedures. The question is it working? Does it control the hazard? Here's what you're gonna do. You follow your SSOP, someone from quality watches. Make sure that people actually follow the SSOP. Problem #1, oftentimes no one follows the SSOP, okay? Then you assemble your equipment, you do your normal startup, but you don't put product onto your equipment. Ideally, you run the equipment. If it's a conveyor belt, you run it for half an hour because you want it to rattle around, stuff move around, stuff shake loose. Then you disassemble, typical daily disassembly, test spots with ATP, total plate counts, aerobic plate counts, and maybe a pathogen test. You gotta see these numbers being extremely low. You can talk about how do you set the thresholds, et cetera, but most of them should be pretty close to 0 if you talk total plate counts. Pathogen counts is difficult because usually we don't find a pathogen there. It's because it wasn't there to begin with, so it doesn't really prove that your sanitation worked. Okay, but TPC works very well. Visual inspection, key of it, okay? So far, so easy. Now comes the key part. Now you need to do complete disassembly of your piece of equipment, and that's where everyone falls down. Everything that has a screw, everything that has a bolt can be taken apart and will be taken apart because you need to make sure deep inside your equipment you don't have residues, you don't have bacteria hiding, you don't have allergens hiding, okay? And then what usually happens here is you find issues. Examples, real world examples. Taking apart stuff in a dairy plant, oops, looks like there's cheese in here. The only problem is you're making milk. Why is there cheese in there? Because sanitation doesn't reach it. No one has ever taken it apart. Milk gets in, bacteria get in, and bacteria and milk create cheese. Okay? Coagulated milk. It's been there for, who knows, months. Okay? Why? Because no one even knew that we can take the equipment apart. Or you take the equipment apart, oops, there's a cookie here. Ice cream example. Why? You make cookie and creams, right, in your feeder, but the feeder wasn't taken apart enough, so some cookies still hide somewhere in there in your equipment. Obviously, your disassembly is not sufficient to clean and sanitize, right? Now you need to rewrite your SSOP to have more complete breakdown, or you need to redesign your equipment so that you can actually clean and sanitize it with a given SSOP. Some of you are practical people. What's the most difficult part of this whole procedure? Where do people balk? Money? Which part of it costs money? Time? Yeah, the time. Which takes the most time? The disassembly to the extent possible. Oops. This takes time. Actually, my standard joke is, this doesn't take time, it's not difficult. I can do this. The problem is I can't put it back together, right? So what really takes time is putting it back together. Now, this procedure I gave you is not some academic bullshit, okay? Real companies do that. This is an example. This is a flowchart from a company called Land O'Frost. So that's a big company in the US. I have a number of dairy companies to do the same thing. And you can see flowchart, normal cleaning and sanitation, observed sanitation, observed application, normal startup, disassemble to normal level, disassemble any remaining components, test, blah, blah, blah. Essentially what I told you. Now, they used to call this seek and destroy. And we heard the term seek and destroy. Seek and destroy is one of the most misunderstood concepts. Next to ATP. ATP testing and seek and destroy, I wish people would understand them. Okay. Most people, when you say seek and destroy, they think, okay, we're going to find pathogens, seek, and then we're going to destroy the pathogens. Yeah, not really. What you're doing is you're trying to seek the niches and destroy the niches. Okay? Because if I seek my Salmonella or my Listeria, and I find it on the floor wall juncture right here, right? And I'm going to clean and sanitize, I retest, I destroyed my Salmonella. I'm like, this is all great. Problem just is another Salmonella comes in 2 weeks later, and you're going to go right to the same spot. So that's when I'm going to have positive after positive after positive. But if I go and find Salmonella there, I say, you know, that's a design problem. I'm going to have to fix the design problem so it becomes cleanable, so that in the future, no Salmonella can ever live there again. Then I destroyed the niche. Okay? Don't destroy the pathogen. Destroy it in the process. Destroy, remove the niche. Redesign. And that's what validation of sanitation will do. It will identify the pieces in equipment that cannot be cleaned and sanitized and fix them through changes in design, or, if you need to, through further breakdown. Okay? And this slide that I showed you, it's actually used for training. Land O'Frost uses that for training to train people to say, what does complete disassembly mean? Now, we all know this is not complete disassembly because the tires are still on the wheels. If you think like Listeria, that's where we're going to live, right? There's a huge empty space in there where no sanitizer is going to reach me, so I'm going to happily ever after live there. So that needs to be part of the disassembly, okay? How long does this take? If you take a filler, my experience is 6 to 8 hours. If you take a dryer, the people I talk to say 48 to 72 hours. Now, with a dryer, what you're probably going to find is you're going to find a bunch of milk powders. And say, we thought we dry cleaned it, but there's still a pound of powder right here. Well, why? Because we didn't disassemble the dryer enough. It wasn't designed to be clean, and we will find these places where we have residues. That's the concept of validation that we apply to sanitation. I can apply the same concept to other prerequisite programs, okay? So I hope this makes sense to you. What the key is with this really helps you to move from reactive, from the incorrect idea of seek and destroy, to preventative, to sanitation, validation, verification. Now, what this typically requires is you need to look at your current food safety testing, which often is organically built up. You inherit it from someone who inherited it from someone. If you ask them, why are we doing this? They say, well, we want to find Listeria. I'm like, finding Listeria is academic. Okay, I want to know where Listeria is. I want to know for each test, what food safety program are you validating? What food safety program are you verifying? okay, because that's the key. Running around with a little swab in a 100,000 square foot facility to sample and find Listeria, is that going to assure food safety? No, you're never going to find it. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Having validated and verified food safety program and prerequisite programs will. Your testing need to drive that. Running around finding problems is reactive. You find a problem, then you can solve it, and you're the hero for the day, but that's not what food safety should be. We have to be preventative. We have to shift the mindset. You need to figure out what food safety and quality programs you have, which has the control, and then you need to start prioritizing them for validation and verification. We talked a little bit about it. In the process thereof, I'm proposing that we need to change how food safety sees themselves. Many food safety professionals who ideally love derive their personal value from being heroes. They're saving the day. We found Listeria. We came in at night, flew half of our way around the world, went into your plant, fixed your Listeria problem, so you only had to recall 1 day's worth of production. Okay, that's what they love, fixing problems. Their attitude is not preventing problems, because traditionally no one puts them on the back and gives them a raise because they prevented a problem, because no one knows, okay? So we need, as a community, as a professional group, change even how we see ourselves. And it's not as easy as some of you might think it is, okay? So that's my take on validation verification. It's a very operational approach, but I do know a lot of people, not a lot, but a number of big plants are using it, and they're fairly successful with that. All right, what are opportunities beyond validation and verification, but supporting validation and verification as we address food safety and quality issues? One big one, data collection and data analytics. We heard about driving continuous improvements. I think as we embark on this sort of preventative journey, we need to move back to statistical process control. We need our data to drive continuous improvement. Near misses, detecting near misses, that is when we don't have a recall. That if we don't have a product positive, but we almost did, okay? We need to react to near misses as much as we need to actual real issues, okay? And then we need to start develop and use simple models and simple modeling tools to really take a systems approach at improving food safety and quality and supporting validation and verification. Okay, I'm gonna give you a few examples of what I mean. So, I remember a plant that was very proud of this slide. They were very proud of how they did this. They had some problems that, about 6% of their finished product was coliform positive, bad idea, so they started doing ATP testing, never had done that before, to verify sanitation, and they had some high values, and it went lower, and they had less coliforms. It was a total success story, right? And I looked at that slide and I said, you suck, okay? Why did I tell them they suck? What's wrong with this? What's the problem right here? So this is the threshold line here, right? That's the target. No continuous improvement. By the time they were right here, that line should have come down here, right? It didn't, and then see what happens towards the end? More variability. See what happened to the coliforms? They were close to 100% no coliforms. The coliform test positives went back up. Why? They didn't drive continuous improvement, okay? So super important. Look at your data, use your data to help you drive continuous improvement. If you don't, you're gonna regress to the median of problems. Many companies are not good at that, often because they don't even have the visibility at these data. And this is just a simple example, right? Ultimately, this is where I think we need to go. We need to have a data collection from farms through processing to consumers. And this is just some examples. At the farm level, I want to know spore levels, somatic cell counts, bacterial counts. I want to know animal feed, because that can impact quality in non-microbial ways, okay? We see that with flavor, for example. Weather patterns. In my plant, I want to have microbial counts, processing parameters, how long is my fermentation time, how many downtimes do I have, what's my shelf life, and then I want to interface with the consumer. I want to know consumer complaints. I'm still surprised how few people integrate consumer complaints with quality and how few companies have really stringent triggers with regard to looking at consumer complaints, even if they go slightly up, and trying to trace it back to see what's happening. There's a lot of opportunity for continuous improvement there. Once you have these data, you can start to build some models. You can ask simple questions. Okay, our shelf life is X. Our failure rate on our cheese, on our yogurt is X%. We have this many consumer complaints because of mold. Okay, here's all the data we have. What happens if we do this, this, or that? Okay, we've worked with companies and say, okay, you want to extend the shelf life of your product because your consumer, your customer, Walmart wants longer shelf life. Okay, we're going to build a model that predicts your shelf life and say, what will happen if you get low spore raw milk? It's going to cost you money. What's the impact of shelf life? What happens if you remove bacteria through bacterification? What happens if you use a new filler? If you have a good model, we can predict, say, here's the cost, here's the return on investment, help people decide what to do to improve quality. Okay? These tools exist, but they only exist, and they can only be used if you collect the right data. Okay? Very, very important to start with the data. Now, I'm not proposing to there's some people that say, oh, data is the new frontier. Okay? We need data. Okay? Collect data, and they will be useful. We don't know what it will go for, but data will be useful. Don't do that. Okay? Have a goal in mind. Which is the goal you have? What do you want to improve? Collect the data to drive that. All right? Ask for better models. In food safety, every model predicts human illness cases. No business leader is going to make decisions on that. These are models we predicted where we actually predicted risk of a recall. Okay? Much better business impact. All right? Root cause analysis, talked about it. Implement good root cause analysis procedures. Companies we work with, they have pre-populated fishbone diagrams for root cause analysis for the major problems. When they find things like this, which is bad welding, they're not just going to fix the welding, but they develop a training program for maintenance so that this problem doesn't happen ever again anywhere. Okay, that's what a good root cause analysis will teach you. Will drive long-term improvements with your root cause analysis, and some of them goes back to your validation. You might find things that you missed in your validation, okay, with that. And then, improve your testing procedures to support your validation and verification. Sometimes your existing methods might not be enough. You may have to use whole genome sequencing. You may have to use subtyping. You may have to use different methods, okay? Review your testing programs. Many people say they do random testing. In reality, they don't. Environmental monitoring. Anyone want to? Is there a day of the week where most samples are collected? What day of the week are most samples collected for environmental monitoring? Friday? Now your labs hate you when you do it Friday. I've done that. Friday labs hate you because the labs have to work on weekends. Particularly if you have an in-house lab, no one does Fridays. Because Wednesdays. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, absolutely. And we've done the data analytics, trust me. Tuesday and Wednesday, your product is very controlled. Monday, not so much. They have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No. Yeah. So, but they call it random because sometimes it's Wednesday, sometimes it's Tuesday. It's not random. It's convenient, okay? So it's not just the test methods, it's also the approaches. Start to move towards random testing, risk-based testing, particularly a dry facility. When's your biggest risk in your dry facility? If you have a big facility, medium low. The day after it rained. Okay. Every facility has a roof leak. The question is, where is it? And does it impact your production? When are you going to find that issue? You sample after rain. Don't sample in dry days, or at least do enhanced sampling after that. Once you have the data, you can drive that. You can drive risk-based sampling, and you're going to find problems. You're going to find that some of your programs are not working much easier if you do that. So it's not just the methods, it's also the sample collection. Now, final set, and this is a concept that may not be that commonly talked about in the US, but it's enterprise risk management. And this is how you interface with business, at least in the US. Enterprise risk management, as I said, you can have this slide. It's actually a concept that applies to businesses in general. In the US, businesses that are traded publicly must have an enterprise risk management program. And that's there to make sure your shareholders don't suddenly lose all their money because they screw up big time, okay? And that means someone in many companies is responsible for managing all risks to a business. And what risks are there? Cybersecurity, your internationally exchange rates. Turkey has raging inflation. That's going to be a problem for your business if you sell a lot of stuff in Turkey, okay? Market share, loss of market share, commodity prices, pandemics, all of these are enterprise risks. In your company, someone, either knowingly or unknowingly, is prioritizing those. So, cybersecurity, and last time we looked at our competitor that had a cybersecurity attack and they had to pay $20 million ransom to get their data back, okay? How much more money do you think the IT department is getting after this? They're getting a lot of money because it might not happen tomorrow, but even if it only happens every 20 years, that's $1 million per year. So if you give me $500,000 and I prevent it, that's still a return on investment, okay? When did food safety argue like that the last time? Yeah, that recall just happened to a competitor. It's only going to happen once every 20 years, but when it happens, it's a $100 million thing. If you give me $250,000, I can reduce our risk, not to zero, but here's how much I can reduce it, and that's why we need resources, okay? We need to start thinking about how we integrate food safety and food quality into enterprise risk management and how we speak that language. If we don't, we will continue to complain about not getting the resources we need most of the time. Some of us are lucky they don't have to worry about us. Many of us do have to worry about it. You can calculate this, okay? Now, I'm not going to go through the calculation, but we've done this. We say, here's our risk of a recall right now. We have a few listeria positives. Testing happens this often. If someone comes test, we might get a recall. We have a 2.7% chance of a recall in a given year. At a certain cost of a recall, that's our cost per year. But if you give me new equipment or fix that floor, that's going to reduce our risk, and our financial exposure is $32,000 versus $270,000. And therefore, an investment is worth it. Now, most of you will say, Martin, you're full of shit, okay? How can you have a number? How can you say $32,000 versus $270,000, right? It's not scientific. Now, anyone ever interacted with marketing? Okay, here's what marketing, in my mind, does, and I know nothing about marketing, right? Marketing goes to CEO saying, hey, we need a new ad campaign. Internet, social media is taking off. We need $1 million for Instagram, and our sales will increase by 3.2%, and we will make that much money. Do you think they know that? Absolutely not. They have no qualms about making up shit like this, okay? And we shouldn't be as bad as them. We shouldn't hold it. But we got to start thinking in terms of a return on investment. We got to be able to learn how to make some financial arguments about risk in order to get our fair share of the risk management budget. If we don't, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do. We're not going to be able to shut down our plant for 3 days to do validation if we cannot justify it financially. So that's, to me, is another way of how we interact with management. Okay, so you're going to go home tomorrow or Monday. What do I think you might want to think about? Assess your maturity. See, where are we with regard to proactive food safety and quality system? Are we reactive or are we proactive? Where's that journey leading us should we get there? Identify high-impact opportunities for proactive food safety. That, to me, the easy one is if you're not validating your cleaning and sanitation on your key pieces of equipment, that's one way to start. Review your testing methods. Identify easy wins. Tests that you've been doing for 20 years. No one has ever reacted to it. No one has ever done anything with the test result. It's not validating or verifying any food safety program. Get rid of them. Replace them with meaningful tests, maybe better technology, to actually be able to validate and verify your program. Identify easy, not easy wins in data collection. What data do we need to have to drive continuous improvement? And start to develop a strategy for enterprise risk management. If you're not, you're going to always play second fiddle. You're never going to be the one people pay attention to unless you have a positive that leads to a recall. And I want you to get attention before that. But you need to think enterprise risk management. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Probably ran over time.
It's okay. Keep the mic.
Okay. Any questions?